Hello, everybody, and welcome to Toffee Bluecast. Tonight, we have a cracking guest for you. It's going to be a good show. We have on Giulia Bould. We'll get her on the show straight away. Quite excited about this, ain't we, Paul? After that amazing podcast that we listened to. There he is.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant to have Giulia in the building. Can't wait for it.
What I want to say to you in the comments as well, it's keep the comments appropriate and stuff like that. We will try and chuck on some questions that you do put on when we can. We have got quite a bit to go through. It is an interview. We want to get as much out of her as we can. And we have got a little format that we want to go through. So get your questions on the screen. We have got Giulia on. We know you all love her. Probably the most liked at the minute from all Everton fans. So here we are. How are you doing? You all right?
Hi. Oh, my goodness. I don't know about that, but yeah, thank you.
You must see that on Twitter, though. A lot of people, they do say they like your stuff, and you seem to get out the message that a lot of us fans are feeling, and you seem to connect with the fans quite a lot. And I think that's a big... Well, you must feel that as well. That's everyone says, Giulia, well done, well done. That's a cracking podcast and stuff like that, which we'll talk about. But yeah, you definitely do connect with the Everton fans well.
Oh, do you know, everyone has been really, really kind. I'm sure we'll get into how the series was made and things, but there was a lot of sleepless nights from me. And when I knew it was coming out, obviously we knew it was coming out and didn't tell anyone. We just put it on sounds. I didn't sleep at all that night. And I wasn't too bothered about me getting abuse. I just didn't want all the people that spoke in it to get abuse from it. Because I think despite it was, it being a roller coaster, shall we say, I think what everyone did, from the managers to Mo on reception to Jimmy in the kit room to, the players, was be really honest. So I just wanted them to go. And I think everyone came across as honest in it. I don't know, you could tell me, but yeah, everyone's been lovely. And yeah, it's just such a privilege. And yeah, thank you to everyone that sent me nice messages.
Well, we'll start this off by saying, and I don't even know the answer. I don't think Paul knows the answer. How did you get into this? How did you get into it all? What, like the presenter stuff? How did it come about?
How? I always loved radio as a kid. Used to listen to a lot of the radio and was a bit of a geek for audio stuff, but I didn't really know how to do it, in all honesty. So I did all the things of, making a radio station as you do at home on a tape cassette, all that kind of thing, trying to pretend you're interviewing people. I used to make my friend be interviewed and all that kind of stuff. And I just loved the whole idea I loved what sport meant, I think, before I even knew what it meant, if that makes sense. I loved, like getting together. We used to have family dues for big sporting events. And I used to love all that kind of stuff, just getting passionate about sport and the way it brings people together. So throughout school, I remember saying I kind of like sport and I'd like to do sport on the radio. And I remember the teachers saying, don't really know how to do that. Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to do something else? And it's like, that's all I wanted to do. So after university, I did English and business management studies, which I keep laughing. I think the business management studies stuff may have come in handy recently for footballing business stories and financial stories. But yeah, so I just thought, you know what, there's got to be a way to do this. And I don't come from anyone that was in that kind of background or that kind of industry. So I thought there must be a way of doing this. And I just wrote to every radio station that I could possibly get to in my car that I had at the time, my little car I had at the time. And Rock FM in Preston wrote back and said, you can come for a week. So I went in for a week and I just did everything and anything they would let me do. And they said, do you want to stay next week? You're not getting anyone else in for work experience next week. So I stayed the second week, and that week they said, tell you what, we'll try you on air. Do you want to go and read a bulletin? And I thought, oh, okay, I'll give that a go. And that was literally how I started. I was thrown at the deep end, and I stayed 6 months. I went for a week and I stayed 6 months. And then from there, just kind of, looked for another job, because that was kind of freelance stuff. And I worked in a bar at night to make sure I could, even if I wasn't being paid by Rock FM, I could go in and just still be in there. And then I went to Tower FM, went to Radio City. That's how I ended up at Radio City. And then, yeah, now I'm at the BBC, which is amazing. I can't believe, like the podcast has just gone so crazy that, yeah, like this time last week, I was on 5 Live Sport. And sometimes I think, how did that happen? I don't really know. But yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of working for free, a lot of asking questions. Somebody said to me today, God, you've put the years of graft in just to get to this point. So yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights, but fortunately I enjoy every minute of it.
No,
That's good.
Luckily, you've got the talent to do. Go on, Paul, go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I'm a big fan of Julie because I remember sort of her doing reports on 5 Live and stuff like that. And I've had loads of questions, Julia, which I hope you can answer. And before we kind of get into the Everton part, this is more about you really and what some people want to know. So these are some questions for Julie. And the quick fire, you can give me quick fire if you like, Julie, for this.
Okay, I'll try.
Favorite Star Wars film?
Oh, easy. The Empire Strikes Back.
Brilliant.
That's my favorite film of all time, not just Star Wars film. That's the best film ever made. I'm not even going to get into an argument about it.
Best take that member?
Mark Owen.
See, on the boat, you're used to this, aren't you? When do you start planning for Christmas?
These are people that know me clearly. My birthday's in June, so I always say once I get to my birthday, then we're in Christmas season.
Very good. You see, we've got very good researchers on this program. Is it true that you have a rug doctor's obsession?
Yeah, I don't know how you know this, but yes, I do. And I actually moved house this year whilst making the series. I moved house, so downstairs I've only got laminate floor, so I don't need a rug doctor as much.
And last one, this is from Tony in Merseyside. Who's your favourite Radio Merseyside presenter?
Oh, that's mean. That's like picking between children. Oh. I'll say Snelly. I'll say Tony Snell.
Snelly, there you go.
I love them all equally.
I know Snelly, and I asked him for 1 or 2 questions, so that's how I managed to get the rug doctor.
Oh, he knows the rug doctor.
There you go.
I'm just going to help him now. He is as bad as I am. And at one stage, we said we were going to get a van and buy a rug doctor and just go around people's houses cleaning carpets.
Well, yeah, I said, what's she like, Julie? He said, oh, I've known her for years. He said, you get a good interview out of her, and she might not stop talking. I think he said something like that.
Yeah,
so, excellent. It's exactly what we want. Anyway, exactly what we want.
Yeah, that sums me up.
Good
she was getting worried then, Paul. She was thinking, how do you?
She was. I know. Yeah. Like I said, researchers on this program, they're really good.
We get the stuff. She thought you was a stalker then, Paul, but no, Paul has the contacts and he knows his stuff and he has the questions and he knew the answers. Right, so we've done a bit about you there, and you have smashed it. You have worked hard to get to where you are, and it feels like you're where you want to be now, and I feel there's loads more to come. We've got to go into this podcast because I think it was amazing, and every Everton fan thinks it's amazing. It's had an amazing reception. You said on the podcast. I mean, you tell us about it now. Go yourself. I mean, give it. Yeah. You tell us. How did it come about?
Yeah, it was something I'd wanted to do on a much smaller scale for a couple of seasons, and I'd been looking to do something for Radio Merseyside, really. So that's kind of how. And then I didn't realize. Obviously, we had sort of COVID going on, and you couldn't go into training grounds, as everyone knows, and presses were on Zoom. So it just made everything 100 times more difficult. So it just sort of, I was trying to get it off the ground and it didn't because we kept getting lockdowns. And then in the middle of that, I know the BBC were in talks, BBC Studios, about making a TV series with Everton. And that didn't come off the ground. Again, I think COVID got in the way of a lot of different things. And then a podcast got mentioned between the club and BBC Studios, who obviously made this, and they said, yeah, we'd love to do a podcast series. So they all agreed to it, and my name got thrown in the mix because obviously they needed someone to go in there, and my name got thrown in the mix. And it all happened for me, really. Obviously, they'd been in talks for a while, and you have to draw up all the contracts and all that kind of things. And yeah, and I think I didn't get that much notice, to be honest. My boss rang me up and said, do you want to sit down? And I thought I was in trouble. I thought, oh no, here we go. And he said, just had a call from BBC Studios. They want to borrow you for quite a while. And I said, why? And he said, to go with Everton. And yeah, and then I wasn't allowed to say anything. So I got put in What are we in now? So November 2022, I went in the World Cup break. So it was after the double Bournemouth week, as it becomes known in the series. I went into Finch Farm then, and I couldn't say anything until it came out on the 12th of October, 2023. So it was almost 12 months living a double life. I couldn't say anything. And if I went to press conferences, I had to be thinking, well, I know something and I can't say that and I can't ask a question. You know, it just became really complicated to fathom what I knew officially and what I didn't know and what people had said to me. And that was difficult. There was one time I did nearly mess up in a press conference, and Dyche sort of looked at me and I looked at him and we laughed it off and moved on. But I'm not going to say which one it was. And we got away with it. No one picked up on it, luckily. So, yeah, I think within probably about 3 weeks of sort of getting the call, going, do you want to do this? Me signing up, and I was dropped in. It happened that fast. Yeah, really fast.
you must have felt a lot of pressure, given that it's a big project, that is, isn't it? And obviously, the pressure is that you've got to get that right. They do want something from this, and you've got to smash it. There's a lot of it was on you, wasn't it? It's all on you because they're sending you out. Is this one of the biggest jobs you say you've had, like scariest challenges that you've had?
By a million miles. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but the best thing I've ever done by a million miles as well. Now I can say that now. There was points in there where I didn't think. I thought, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I genuinely, and I know a few people have said, I don't understand how you thought that, but I genuinely thought we were going in to tell a story about what happened against Palace at the end of the previous season and how Frank Lampard had, Frank had really sort of got to, to really adore being an Everton manager. And it was sort of how he rebuilt it. And, I never expected, a title race or even sort of a cup final, but I thought it would have been steadier than it was. I certainly couldn't. I don't think anyone would have predicted what happened with so many storylines. So there's quite a lot of stuff we recorded that never actually made the podcast because you're recording things all the time thinking, well, we might not have a storyline. There could be sort of, the last month might be playing for nothing type of thing. And, it's learn it. So there's quite a lot of material that never made it because there was so many twists and turns. But yeah, there was a lot of pressure. And there's obviously a team that worked on it. A lot of people were in London. There was pretty much just me in Finch Farm. So yeah, and I knew every time I was recording something, if you're doing it chronologically and you're telling this story, and I knew everyone had questions. I knew the amount of people that said to me, and I could see it online going, "Oh, everyone missed a trick. Imagine one of those series in Everton at the minute, finding out what's going on." And I was like, yeah, imagine. No, full well I was in there, but I felt that pressure, and I probably put pressure on myself, thinking everyone's going to want to know what Seamus Coleman thinks when Frank Lampard's been sacked, and I'm sat with him. And I've got one chance to get it because you could ask these players now, oh, what was it like when Frank Lampard was sacked? And they would give you an answer and it'd be a really good answer, but it's not the same as that raw emotion of it happening, which it was a year ago this week. So they would give, so I knew to get, and I think that's what works so cleverly about the podcast. I think a lot of people that don't listen to podcasts, and a lot of people said to me, oh, it would have been, before they'd heard it, it would have been nice to have a TV show in there. We could have seen it. And actually, I think the people in studios that are really clever at doing all the sound design and stuff have made it that when you're listening to it, you can picture it anyway. You know these people, and you know what Goodison looks like, and you know what the outside of Finch Farm looks like. You know what football pitch looks like. But it's the raw emotion of everybody speaking in that moment. And I think that's what does it. But it was definitely pressurized, and also I'm a bit, you kind of want to ask a question, but then I know as well, people, it was a rotten time in January, and everyone did feel bad. Everyone did like Frank. He was very popular. He was a really popular person, and they spoke to everybody. And I think what surprised me was the speed that it happens when a manager goes. Like if we leave a job, you kind of hand your notice in, you have a notice period, everyone knows you. And it literally, it's bad. And I've never seen him to this day. Never seen him. He literally just left. I've never seen him. Like that's it. It happens that fast. And the players are kind of used to that. They were very sad about it, but they just move on really quickly because you have to. So I think that's what was like, to see that firsthand was Yeah, it's a completely different world to what we live in.
Well, you
What about
you must have had like. Go on, Paul. Go for it.
I was just going to say, you were in such a position there where you've seen both sides before and after Frank. What was the kind of the biggest change, or was there anything that struck you, as in 1 week Frank's there, the next week he's gone, and then suddenly things have changed, or is it something in particular? What was the mood sort of in that week and afterwards?
I think the whole of January was hard because the double Bournemouth week was bad, but then there was that weird World Cup break, and when I went in, Finch Farm was pretty quiet because a lot of the players were either away on international duty or they'd all been away to Australia, and then they got given a little break. So it was all, and everyone came back in little, and everyone had a real positivity. I know with hindsight, it's easy now to say maybe Frank should have gone in the November in the World Cup break. But genuinely, I certainly didn't get the vibe that anyone expected what was about to happen. And then it very quickly turned. I think it was Brighton, wasn't it? There was Wolves, Man City away, and then Brighton. And I just remember it absolutely tipping it down, that absolutely bombing it down with rain at Goodison. And that kind of was where I felt the pressure levels just overnight cranked up. And then you're in a really weird scenario where the TVs are on in Finch Farm, the yellow tickers are going. You could see I was driving past the reporters at the gate, and I was being let in the gate and inside because I was treated like a staff member. I had an induction, I had a staff induction and everything. So I was definitely treated as I was part of it. So yeah, you have a really surreal thing where you're driving past all these reporters and then you come in and they're talking about what you're inside. That's a really weird moment. And it did feel, I could feel the stress levels increasing a bit. And I think you've got to remember a lot of those players had been in it already. And I think because it was so fresh, what had happened the season before and the Palace game, I think it felt a horrible sinking feeling of deja vu. But I still think at that point, although it felt rough, I still don't think anyone expected it to go to the last game. Well, Dyche says that in the series that when I go back in the summer, he never expected it ever to go to the last game. But it did feel, it almost felt, now looking back with that hindsight in January, it felt inevitable, I think. And it just seemed to go on and on, as everybody knows. And then it got to the West Ham game, and I think everybody knew what was coming. And it's not nice to see. It's not, and it's really easy to say, when you're watching it on TV and go, get rid of him, it's humiliating. And you could see the toll it was taking on Frank. And Joe Edwards, his assistant manager, as well. You could see they weren't sleeping. It was a lot. It was a lot to see.
Yeah.
I remember that the part that I like that you put in there, where you said you went and you seen Frank Lampard just sitting on the ball, and you could tell that the stress, and it was all getting to him, and it was too much. And that you don't realise sometimes, do you, as a football fan? Because when I listen to this podcast, as a fan, you've got that passion for your team, and that's it. But then when the good thing about this podcast for me is that you take us as fans inside. Like, you took me closer to the manager and the players and all the people, the staff. You took me inside of Everton and gave me the feeling of what it was like inside during the Frank era of him getting sacked and then onwards. And you feel sorry for Frank because he was just over his head, wasn't he? And when you first went in, you said that this was for this. You went in doing this thinking this was going to be better for Everton. For this is where things are going to get better, and then all of a sudden, you start to realise you're doing a podcast where Frank Lampard's going to get sacked, and and it's a big turn then. And you mentioned on the podcast as well that you're probably thinking to yourself, if he's getting sacked, do I even go ahead with this? Do I carry this podcast on?
Yeah, there was many days I drove up to the gate and I thought, are they going to let me in? And and I know people criticised. That's my dog squeaking a toy. I'm very sorry. She's just chipping in. I know a lot of people criticised what was going on inside the club, and they felt they weren't getting answers. And I can honestly say that people were trying everything. People were working long hours. Frank was there well before I got there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I'd leave 6:30 at night, and he was still there. Dyche's as well. Dyche does those kind of hours. They're like 7 till 7. You know, and I know they get a lot of money, and everyone says, well, they get all this money and it doesn't matter. Well, actually, to see Frank Lampard, who I remember as a Premier League legend, we've all seen him playing an England shirt. We've all seen him at World Cups. We've all seen all that. And then you think of what happened just over 6 months earlier, where, you know, he was bouncing up and down on top of the boxes and everyone was celebrating. And to see him that last week, and he knew what was coming, it's humiliation. And he doesn't want to be a victim. He doesn't want people feeling sorry for him. He doesn't want that. But there's nothing you can do. And I think that another thing that surprised me was the speed with which everything unraveled so quick. January was by far the hardest month in there. And I include the end of that because there was all the other things, you know, there's protests being organised. There was, you know, the board saying they weren't going to go to a game. And there was, it just felt like Everton was constantly on the TVs. It was the only story, and the pressure I felt as well at that point, because I thought, I'm the only one in here. I'm the only one that's going to be able to say what happened. And that felt a lot. And then there was a week without a manager as well. So, you know, and everyone's going, what about transfer? And it just felt like very claustrophobic at one point for me, because I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. This feels more than I signed up for.
You said in the podcast that even the players were starting to ask you, do you know who the manager's going to be?
Yeah. And you, I don't know. If you don't know, I don't know. And you know, there was like some surreal moments where there'd been a couple of players just watching one of the tellies, watching what was going on. They were talking about Everton, and we're stood inside Everton. It was the oddest thing. I don't think I'll ever experience anything, but it was kind of, it got me to see and feel a little bit what it's like to be a player. And you're in that goldfish bowl where, you know, even they don't know what's necessarily going on. They don't know what, you know, they're going to work and they're trying to get themselves out of it. And it did take a Connor Cody, you know, he says in this series, there was school drop-offs he didn't want to do. And Seamus Coleman was the same, like school drop-offs. And like, imagine not wanting to go and pick your kids up from school because you're feeling the burden of what everybody else is feeling. It was highly pressurized in there. And, you know, for what anyone says about the whole situation, I can assure everyone was doing absolutely everything they could to fix it. And it wasn't fixing it for a time. And that felt a lot. And then, yeah, no manager for a week. There was no game, fortunately. Paul Tate and Leighton Baines taking training. I was allowed to go into training. That was surreal. You know, Leighton Baines is joining in. Looking like he could still do a job. And then you've got the Anthony Gordon thing unfolding at the same time as well. And Dan Juma, we all know what happened there. And it just felt like every hour there was just something happening. And it just felt a lot. And I felt for the players because, you know, they don't want to be in that situation. They didn't want to see another manager go, and they all liked Frank. So it felt a lot. Yeah, I would never. I don't think if you paid me money right now, I don't think I'd go back and relive last January.
You got loads. It was bad, but it was the perfect time to be there if you wanted to, because it was like EastEnders. Everything was going on, wasn't it? Everything that could happen was happening. Do you know at the start when you first met Sean Dyche, was you nervous about that? Because you went from connecting from one manager, and Sean Dyche, you're probably thinking, oh, I wonder what he's crazy though, because he seems to like you. On the interviews, you can tell you seem to get really good stuff out of Sean Dyche. Just my opinion. Sometimes when you go and see him in the press as well, you can tell you've got a good friendship with Sean Dyche, and he's got a lot of respect for you. How did that build?
Yeah, I saw it. It's funny because you see like conspiracy theories now, which has never happened to me in my life. I've been like part of conspiracy theory, and somebody was messaging saying I've known him for years. I have never met Sean Dyche until the moment you hear me meet him. That was where didn't know him, never met him before, never interviewed him before. And I'll be honest, I was terrified. Absolutely. Because you think, oh, Sean Dyche, you know, he's going to come in, he's loud. And I thought he's going to make me do a bleep test like everybody else was having to do. And I thought, oh, no. And Yeah, I don't know. We just seemed to. I was terrified of him. I met him. I just seem to really. He has a very dry sense of humor, and I have quite a dry sense of humor. So I think we just picked up on that. He saw I was working really hard on what I was trying to do, and I don't know. Yeah, just really enjoyed his company. I think he enjoyed chatting to me. There was a lot of recordings. We would chat for well over an hour. None of that made it. Some of it was just nonsense. We were talking about making pasta and all sorts of weird things that didn't make it. So maybe we should do a my version cut and just put in all the random stuff. Yeah, I don't know. He might tell me off next time I go to the press conference. Don't know, but
So I would imagine that I'd imagine that he kind of liked it, to be fair, considering a lot of the interviews he has is either about Dominic Calvert-Lewin or the points deduction, or Dele Alli. Yeah, exactly. So he probably enjoyed that, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I did ask him if he listened to it, because he said to me after a press conference a few weeks ago, some of his friends were listening. And I said, have you listened to it? And he said not. I don't know if he has or he hasn't.
He has. He's having you on there.
I think he enjoyed. I think what's a shame for Dyche, having seen him a lot and seen what he's like, and the players really respect him and really like him. I think what has been a shame is because since he's been in, even up to now, there's been. I mean, he started joking about it in press conferences. Nobody asked him about football because there's so many things going on. I actually don't think anyone has got to properly know him, which I think if, fingers crossed, everything calms down, I think actually even more people will like him. And I know a lot of people have said they listened to the series and said they weren't sure about him as a person before, or actually they really like him. And for me, that's a huge relief because he's very funny. He cares a lot. He works incredibly hard. He has very high standards, really high standards. But he also knows how to have a laugh with the players. You hear with Tom Davies, don't you, where he's having a laugh with him about his clothes and going to Glasgow and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm glad he came out with it really well because genuinely, I really like him. I think he's really good. I think he's great for Everton. And yeah, he can be quite funny. He's still scared. I'm still scared of him, but he's funny.
He has got that sort of personality, hasn't he? Where he's
the head teacher.
He's got the presence in the room. I had a boss like him before as well, and I don't know why, but he just had me completely under control. And Sean Dyche is like that in the press conference. It literally, someone can ask him a question, he can be in control of that and make them doubt themselves straight away on the question. And he does it with the players, but that's what we needed, I think. Yeah. Like Frank Lampard, good manager. Yeah, he does. He's got him under the wings. You're right, and that's why I'm really fond of Dyche. So we all have questions. Sometimes you don't like the players he picks, but then I do think you don't know. Listening to the documentary, it makes you see things completely different. Another person that I want to point out, I've got little points here. I'll put them together. But the farewell, I never hear from him. But I tell you something. I've never enjoyed listening to someone so much. You get him loads in the podcast, and I want to hear more from him because he knows more. He's a good guy, and we don't know what the sporting director's like as a fan. You think to yourself, "Oh, is farewell good? Is he crap? Is he the man?" And then all of a sudden, when you listen to him in the documentary, he knows his stuff, doesn't he? He is good. So it was good on him. What did you think on that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was going to record with me. To fair play, I did do a bit of persuasive, to get him on the series. And again, fair play, he trusted me to do that. So fair play. And again, he just said, "I just want to be honest." And I was like, "That's all I want you to be, is honest." And I think people get that from him. Yeah, very organised, hugely organised. He is meticulous. Everything is detailed. He goes to the women's games. He checks in on them, checks in on the academy games, checks in the fit. So it's not just the first team he's across everything. And yeah, he works out. He's never off work. He's on the phone. He's in at weekends. Yeah, I mean, I know we're in like January at the minute. He will be working to see what could be done, if anything could be done. He's an exceptionally hardworking guy who loves Everton. He loves Everton. And he says in it, his dad's an Evertonian. And yeah, and I think he took a lot of stick, didn't he, last January? And again, it's only now we can look back, and I'm so delighted that I managed to get this all recorded, because in it he says, and I loved the phrase where he talks about It was just after January window shut, and I said to him, look, nobody came in. And that was the headline, wasn't it? The only Premier League side not to bring anybody in a relegation battle and without a manager until a couple of days before the transfer window shut. And they said, and there was a lot of criticism as to what went wrong. And he explains really well in the series that, we had limited resources. There's not a lot of money. We looked at what we could get. Was it better than what we had? Probably not. Were they going to sit on the bench that if therefore it's not worth us, paying out for somebody that's going to sit on the bench? Then he says, doesn't he, cross my fingers, touch wood, this has worked. And I remember he saying it at the time, and I thought, you've really put everything on this. And that was his strategy. And actually it paid off. There was a lot of injuries to a tiny squad. So I think maybe safety would have been sooner had, people not been dropping like flies, which he couldn't have predicted. But he did it. And he didn't end up in a situation where there was any more money spent, and fair play. And, he got the right manager in, I think. He says, didn't he already had a file on Dyche anyway, because he has files on people. His office is full. So upstairs in the first team block, you're not really supposed to go in there, but Dyche started letting me go.
You had VIP, I could see, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't really. When Frank was there, I was allowed in some of the offices, but I wasn't allowed all the way to the end. But Dyche let me go to the end. So you go to the end of the corridor. Kevin Thelwell's on the left-hand side, and he's got an office the same size as the manager's office. And his is it's a desk, but there's like the big files, it's paperwork. There's everything everywhere. Like there's computer, you name it, he's got everything. And then Dyche's office is just empty. Completely empty. There's a big chair and a big desk, and then a little chair on the other side, and there's 2 chairs in the window, 2 big chairs, and that's it. Nothing else. Because that's who he is.
I remember listening to him in a podcast. He did say in a podcast though that he doesn't like to brag or anything like that. He's simple, isn't he? He doesn't like to show off. He said at home he's got no pictures that he's a manager or anything like that. He doesn't want to get the spotlight to his kids or anything like that. He forgets stuff when he's at home. And I really like the when Dyche and Wone got together on the podcast as well. They're just a double act there. They're like the Chuckle Brothers, ain't they? And that made a really good episode. I thought them two together, Dyche and Wone, when they got together, because they talked about living together and stuff like that. And
that was my favourite afternoon in there. If someone says to me, what was your favourite time in there? It was spending the afternoon with them. Obviously, I'd spent time with them separately, but never together. Oh, and it went on for ages. Again, there's loads that didn't even get put in. There's loads, and they're talking about living together and going out. And Ian Wone being Sean Dyche's best man and panicking about it. And it's
that was, I was laughing at that. That was funny.
And that was funny. That's who they are, and they work really hard, and they still have a place. They have a place now. I loved the bit as well where Ian Wone's laughing about how he bought the flat after 9 years at Burnley and got sacked 3 weeks after he bought it. Like just the dry humour of each other is
hoovering up.
Yeah,
hoovering up in the flat. And like you say, it's typical Sean Dyche as well. Sean Dyche to say Wone is going to give the best speech ever. He's going to absolutely smash us. And then Wone says he went to the toilet and he was being dry sick before. That's why I say it was a really good podcast on there, because you got a proper insight on what these personalities are like as people, as well as just what they are as your manager and stuff like that. And I also found the where Wone says, because he's got the Everton link, Wone has, and he said when he drove, he really wanted Dyche to get that job, didn't he? Wone did, and Wone kept saying to Dyche, "Have you got it? Have you got it?" And Dyche is like, "I don't know."
And that's fascinating because we're sat there and we all think at home, oh, well, all these reports are coming in and Sean Dyche has been contacted, and Ian Wone's saying to me, afterwards, I kept ringing him and he said, I've not heard from anybody. So it kind of just shows you again and how speedily that happened. Obviously spoke to him, got them in, and you could see it meant so much to Ian Wone. And, when he was there, even now, if I see him up there now, it means so much to him to be part of it. And, that first time him going to Goodison for the Arsenal game was really emotional. His dad's not no longer here. His grandparents grew up just streets away, so he used to play outside Goodison. So I don't know. I can't even imagine what that must feel like. And then you're going as the assistant manager of this club you've supported since you were little and played in the street outside and dreamed of being. I mean, that must have just been so much for him. And then to win against Arsenal in that first game, against all the odds with everything going on. And, there was a protest going on, which I thought was brilliant, the way the protest even happened. And we covered that that was the way fans were able to split it and say, this is a protest about we're unhappy with how our club is being run. But when we get in there, we get behind the scene. And it was, absolutely fantastic. And then, to get that goal as well. And I'm pleased Dyche has got a banner now. I have to say, I'll hold my hands up. Fair play, whoever did it. I think it was the 1878, wasn't it? The Dyche's Dogs of War. And I think he'll never sort of say, oh, love my banner. But I think he'll be secretly happy about it.
He well loves
it. Ian Wone should have one, though.
He should.
Yeah, on what you said on Ian Wone, he did say that when he first went to Goodison, he went past the part that he used to go past with his dad, and he had a tear in his eye when he got the job and stuff. It's crazy though, because you think about it now. I know a lot of Everton fans, you know what we're like. We're very reactionary, but we've got Wone, whose dad was an Evertonian, so he's got a massive link to us like that. You've got Farewell also that's got that link. His parents are all pushing. They've all got parents or people in the family that are Evertonians. Surely it helps because it gives them an extra connection to do well at the club, and it puts more pressure on them as well.
Yeah, and I think they're all well aware that Everton's pretty unique in how it is, and the fans consume everything. They know everything. They want to be part of it. They don't just kind of go on a match day and then go. It's the very fabric, as you guys know, it's the very fabric of who a supporter is when they're supporting Everton, and I don't think that's lost. And I do think. I mean, Dyche is fantastic at the sports psychology, and I think that comes across in the series. But I actually think now I've seen a shift the way he's even talking now. And the other day, I think it was a few press conferences ago, I thought, oh, you've got it now. He's got the bug as well. Like he's got, and I think he always did have it. I mean, he did say to me quite early on, pretty much the first time I spoke to him, actually, when he looks back at his career and he thinks of Everton, he thinks of it as this great club. And so he did always get it, but I think even more so now. I think he's gone hook, line and sinker.
I was going to say there's obviously, you wouldn't believe it, but there are some people who have not listened to the podcast, Julia. I know there are some out there. Eugene had a question about Mr. Mashiri and about you. Did you get an interview for him, or was that ever an option?
We did ask. I think he says in the series we did ask a few times, and no, we didn't get to sit down with him or any of the board until it was Colin Chong, which is obviously in the final episode 10, which was just at the start of this season. I went back to see him. So yeah, we did, and we're pretty honest about that. I think that was important that, it wasn't I don't think anyone would call it a PR piece. It was certainly a piece of journalism. So it did have to have both sides in it, No, we did ask, but no, we did not get him. And I never met him in answer to the next question. Because someone will go, did you meet him? No.
Why you just said that, Paul, I just want to point out to people, it is in the comments, the podcast is. And it's also in the bio underneath on the show. So I've tried to plaster it all over. If you haven't listened to it, you wonder what we're talking about, go and listen to this podcast that Julia's done, because you've absolutely smashed it, in my opinion. And when I do these shows, just a fan channel now, just before and after games, what we think, it's hard work. And I can't imagine how much hard work that was. And some people, they just get stuff and they just think, oh, it's a given. And you listen to it and you don't appreciate how hard it is to actually put all the stuff together that you've done in that order, because you got an interview from a lot of fans of how he was feeling. I thought you connected with the fans well. You also got the receptionist. You got the
Mo.
show people that show.
I'm still in touch with Mo. Retired. I'm still in touch with Mo. I still speak to Jimmy. I've kept touch with pretty much everybody. So
Kit Guy as well. You also got the women's football in there as well. The Everton's women's football. You got interviews on most of the players. There's so much in it, isn't there? Did you have all this bullet pointed, or did you literally just land on it all? Because you have got a lot in it, haven't you? You must be happy with how much you got in it.
We always had a rough plan, but it's one of those things that you can plan. And certain things we drew up at the start, like, we might want to do this, we might want to do that. And then as things completely changed, the it's not FFP, PSR, I should know that. I said it enough times in the last week. PSR charge even happened while I was in there, because that was February, wasn't it? It was the day of the women's Merseyside derby. Is that March? Might have been March. So yeah, there was everything in there. Plus the stadium's in there. Dan Meese is on it as well. Obviously, he came over from America. Right. So it was important to try, Sue Gregory, who I love, who is the chief executive of Everton in the community. I felt that was really important to get that in. And that was something as a team, we all wanted to make sure it wasn't just about the first team. I mean, it kind of centered on it in the end a lot more probably than the initial plans were. Just because of what was happening. And it does center around your first team, doesn't it? And I thought Meg Finnegan is brilliant in it. Talking about what it's like. She does a great thing with Ian McAlton, who is the keeper coach as well, who's a absolute brilliant. You could do a podcast series on him. He's a brilliant character, the women's keeper coach. And, she's telling him and me about the first time she did a TV interview and was so excited. And then the comments were just really derogatory comments to her. And it's something that's prevalent at the moment, which I won't go into because I don't really want to give airtime to that side of it. And she got all those comments and his sort of reaction going, really? And, she said, I've had to learn to laugh about it. So that's a pressure on women's footballers as well. That's completely different. And then I really liked that last sort of week or so where Lucy and Meg are talking to me inside. Obviously the women were safe. The women, they were playing their season out completely safe, and getting their thoughts on what was going on. Because it does impact everybody in there, everybody. The women are looking at what's going on, thinking, what happens if the worst case scenario happens? And that's hard because you are. And I started finding myself sort of April, May thinking, what can I do? What can I do in here that might help? So I was just really cheerful. But you do, because everyone's like, what can I do? And then the ground staff are like, right, well, we'll make sure everything is perfect here. And you find yourself doing all sorts, as everybody did on those days. And I loved, chatting to people outside the Winslow as well. The ladies that I met again at the end by sheer fluke, found them in a crowd. I think it was after Newcastle, wasn't it? I saw her, and it was just, that felt a gut punch, didn't it? I don't know about you. That Newcastle.
I was just going to say that. For me, listening to that, I thought that was a moment where it drew me in listening to the podcast. Because the podcasts, I wasn't a fan of podcasts, but this one I really did like. I like stuff that you can watch, but when I listened to this podcast, it was really good because you can just literally walk your dog and listen to it, and you've got the story, and it's coming out, and you think, whoa, it does capture you big time. And the part that captured me was the Newcastle game for you. That proper hit you.
When I had a meltdown.
Yeah, it was. I felt it with you because you felt it as a fan, and you literally said on the podcast, you was like, the fans have pulled the buzz down the road, pushed the buzz down the road themselves. They couldn't. They had the guy with the pipes and stuff, or whoever it was, and we built it up. And as fans, we gave everything that game, built it up, and then it's like pop. It just deflates you, doesn't it? Because you just couldn't do no more that game. And when you had you must have done a walk after the game after you spoke to all the fans, and you was really worried then, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that was where I suddenly thought, I've got a horrible feeling this is going to the end now. I was kind of, maybe I was a bit deluded, thinking it'll be all right. And also the pressure as well there was, and I don't know, I never really signed up either to be sort of doing an audio diary. And then I found myself doing that. So it all kind of has been something that I didn't really think about. I don't know what I thought I was signing up to, I'll be honest, not this. Don't know what I thought I was signing up to. And I think I just wanted to capture little moments. Like when I was driving to meet Dyche for the first time, I think I recorded that. And there's a lot of little things. And that was the bit where, I'd walk back through Stanley Park, where I park up. I started to panic. I think panic was setting in, and I think that's how everybody. I don't know. I'm speaking for everybody here, and I shouldn't. I think maybe what I said, though, I know a few people have said to me, that's exactly how I felt. Was, oh God, what now if the worst happens? What if you know, this keeps happening and it just, you know, everyone was being patched up. There was no Seamus in that game, and he came back for Leicester. And then Leicester, like 3 days later, felt massive, didn't it? And felt like, all right, if there's a win here, that's probably okay. And then it was a draw, and you're like, that doesn't help. It was like constant panic all the time. But that bit. And when it came out, I didn't know if that should have been left in. And I thought I could sound like a complete idiot here. I literally sat in the pack. I think you hear the keys go in the engine. I just had a meltdown, a complete meltdown.
You weren't the only one, though. You weren't the only one by any means.
We was having one together.
Obviously, me and Dan were having plenty of meltdowns. But everyone who's listening to us, and you know, group chats and spaces and all that sort of stuff, people were feeling it. I think the best stories are also the details as well. And so I thought what you did, which was really important, because it's our kind of club, is that everyone, from whether they're taking tickets on the door, or they're being a steward, or they're doing this, that, and the other, it affects everyone. I think we're almost, from comments I've read and sort of the feeling about Premier League over the last, you know, few months or whatever, if you don't actually go to a game, if you're not there, then it can be a bit faceless. It can be, if you're just watching the games on a Saturday or a Sunday on Sky Sports, and you're just reading the ticker at the bottom on Sky Sports News, it doesn't really show everything that you can show in the podcast. And so we would never have heard of Jimmy, for example, or, you know, the girls at the Windsor. We wouldn't have had any of that. And so that's really important to try and get that kind of story. I think that's why it's so powerful as a podcast, but it makes a great story as well. And what I think what everyone would wonder is that if there are plans sort of going forward to hopefully you won't need to, because it'll be proper calm and everything, or maybe it's the next phase where in the sequel we actually start going up.
Yeah. I keep, this is what everyone keeps asking me, and everyone keeps saying to me, are you in there now? Can you give us any, like, wink twice if you're in there? Or I'm not in there. I'm in there doing normal stuff. I'm not in there like I was. Do you know what? If the opportunity came up, as hard as it was, as much sleep as I lost, and as much, you know, amount of tears I shed, whether that be in a dugout at Finch Farm or in my car or wherever. Yeah. Do you know what? If everyone said, we're going to put you back in again, would you do it? Within a heartbeat, I would go in. Whether or not that'll ever happen, I don't know. It might never happen. Sometimes things are best as a one-off. And I don't know. I don't know if there would be as chaotic a storyline as there was last time. I mean, I know things are not settled now. I feel like a corner has been I think, get the next few months out of the way and fingers crossed. I think Dyche is a really good manager. I think he's great. But yeah, in answer to I'd go back in a heartbeat, but whether or not it ever happens, I don't know. I mean, fair play to the club. They left me in there the last time. And I'm not bound.
I'm gutted now. I was actually really hoping that. I hope you're still lying to me. I still don't believe you, and I hope that you are, because it is a time that we need you in there now. I think there's a lot going on, which we'll talk about towards the end. I mean, we said we'll hit it on the hour, but
it was I can honestly say it was my life. It was absolutely right. I didn't do anything. It was friends I've only just started catching up with again, and you know, I went for lunch with one of them, and they went, "We're not seeing you for a year," and I was like, because was hidden in there. It literally was my life.
Don't worry about your friends. We'd rather get the inside information of Everton. So just get you back in. Catch up with your friends.
I was in there.
I thought Farewell was quite brutal. Well, I mean, I know we already spoke about him, but I thought he's quite brutally honest. That for me, listening to him, he was saying, we're not out of this situation. Don't expect that we're going to have money this window, because he said on it. And the Everton fans need to listen to this as well now, I think, as well.
It's now,
and I did.
He's talking about.
He said it's each window. It's window by window. It's not no. He said, Farewell said, I'd love to make a plan like Brighton. I'd love to be like years ahead and do stuff that way. But he said, with the way things are at Everton now, it's window by window. And he says it's going to take a while. And that's how we need to be told. That's why I said I'd like to hear more from him, because we're on this. We did the transfer deadline day on this channel and didn't sign no one, and we was going absolutely ballistic. But then when you actually listen to Farewell say, we didn't want to sign players for no reason, or we didn't want to get the wrong signings, we would have moaned if they did get the wrong signings, wouldn't we? Or they rushed it and just got players for the sake of it. And I'm happy that we didn't sign, especially with the financial situation, that we didn't sign anyone that window.
I bet you didn't think you would have said that if you'd have rewound this time last year. No. You probably wouldn't think you'd be saying that, and actually hearing his explanation is really good, because you think, oh yeah, I get what you're doing. And the episode, what is it? Is it 8? 8, I think. Where he sits down with Mark Chapman and says, and anyone who hasn't listened to it, even if you don't listen to anything else, listen to episode 8, because Kevin Thelwell essentially explains the situation right now, what is going on and the decisions and why they're being made, because obviously he's been privy to information. So it's fascinating, and I think he's a really calm guy. He comes across very calm, doesn't he? I don't know if he is calm. Maybe he's just very good at pretending to be calm.
He is calm, but also him saying that he was listening to the results like us as fans, and Dyche as well. Dyche. This is the thing, Julia. Dyche says he doesn't care. And he said in some of the press conferences, Dyche he plays it cool, and he has to. And that's why he's so good at his job, because he's got thick skin. And I think that's where Lampard struggled a little bit. But I think Lampard's good. I'm not disrespectful. I just think Dyche has got proper thick skin for the job. He can handle it. And Dyche, he says, don't look at other results. It's all on us. But then when you did the podcast, he went and said, he was watching the other games. And then Farewell also said, he was like, I was watching the other games thinking, this is what I did as well. Me watching them might change the result or make the difference. And that's what we was doing as fans.
Yeah, you did anything and everything to try and think you had the power. I remember the Leicester game, I was watching it at home. I remember thinking, maybe if I go and stand in the hallway and just listen to the TV, not watch it, like all these ridiculous things. I was like, if I'm not watching, maybe that will help. I have no idea I just remember I completely lost the plot by that stage. But that's how it is, and I think that was fascinating. And I think Dyche in a press conference is a character. I think that's who he is, and he's not going to go and give. It's frustrating as somebody in a press conference, and I know it's frustrating sometimes when fans want specific answers, and I get that everyone wants answers, but actually his job is to keep it really calm, and he doesn't want Everton plastered over the back pages. He doesn't want a headline, because that's not what he wants for his players and what he's doing. As he says, block out the noise. That's what he's trying to do. So it's frustrating. I think he lets it slip a little bit as well. Episode right at the end when everything's fine. And I got through him in the tunnel, and you hear him say to me, "Did you hear them in the press conference saying we are not favourites?" And it clearly bothered him, because did you hear it? And I said, yeah, and he went, complete nonsense. That's why I didn't answer it. And actually, it clearly did bother him, but he didn't want to give an answer. Obviously, he didn't want the back page to say, Sean Dyche says Everton are favourites to stay up. He didn't want that. No. He just didn't want anybody talking about it. So as frustrating as it is, I think it's perfect for sports psychology and for protecting the players. Doesn't throw a player under the bus. Doesn't throw, he'll praise a player, but quite often if somebody says, oh, such and such had a good game, he'll go, but so did, and name another 3. If you watch it, I found him just a fascinating person to watch. I feel like I've learned a lot.
Really protected Calvert-Lewin as well. He's really protected Calvert-Lewin as well. And he did, listening to the podcast, get on this podcast, because it's amazing. I know sometimes it's an effort to sign in and just sign up for the podcast, but it's free, so just get on this podcast.
Yeah.
He definitely checked Calvert-Lewin's mattress, in my opinion, listening to that podcast.
Well, you assured me he didn't, because I asked. But this is like Dan Juma in the plane.
He did say to you, he did say to you, he goes, but it is kind of true. He goes, I didn't check it, but it is kind of true. So I didn't check it. And he goes, I did ask him, stuff like mattresses can make a difference. And that is how specific
true, isn't it?
Sean Dyche is.
Yeah,
He's
it is true. You know, what car have you got? Because it depends what driving position it is and all that. And actually, you know, little things like that. And, you know, I know there's been questions over him not scoring, but I think he's been brilliant. I think under Dyche, he's been brilliant. This season, he's got him back to fitness. He's playing most of the games, and you know, and I think once he gets a goal, it'll happen. Yeah, I think you know what he's doing. His work rate's brilliant. So fair play.
Yeah, I think Sean's talent is, although he's got so much experience, he does just come across as putting everything as obvious and as simple. It's just obvious. Why would we not do this? Why would that player not do that? Why are you asking a daft question like that? Because it's obvious to me. And he kind of gives, I think he gives a lot of fans that kind of settled feeling because, oh, well, we see him being as sure as he is. It just makes us feel a little bit calmer, certainly going into what we're like over each week, going up and down.
Yeah. And, you know, he puts Everton first. That's what he's doing. He's not making it about him. We've seen that before in the league, and we'll see it again. You know, certain managers make it about themselves. Mourinho always did, didn't he? You know, it was always about him. Yeah, and I know it's frustrating sometimes when you want a really specific answer, but that's not kind of the forum for him to do it. And he, you know, his job is to go out there and win a game, and he will continue to do that until Everton are safe. Interesting as well. He did think it wouldn't come down to the last game. But even then, he was calm. He was so calm. I think he was the only calm person in there. I mean, I've never.
He's certainly calmer than me and Dan at the Bournemouth game. We were there.
I think Tarky says, doesn't he? And it's something like it was like an out of body experience when that goal went in. And I thought, yeah, it's a really good way of describing. But Dyche, I've seen footage. I mean, at the time, I couldn't see anything. I don't know if I face planted my seat or whatever. I don't know what happened, to be honest. I know I had cuts and I looked the least professional I've ever looked going to do an interview afterwards with the manager. I had cuts and bruises and just covered in dirt and looked a complete emotional wreck. And he was just really calm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why are you so calm? No one else was. Everyone else had the jitters. They were all like, oh.
Well, I was going to say, I think it was just a fantastic crescendo to the podcast, wasn't it? That it eventually gets that moment. Do you know what I mean? That'd kind of be the be all and end all at the end. That's your Rocky fight at the end, Dan. That's your Karate Kid crane. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, it is. But I don't want to do that again. Yeah, it's at the end of Star Wars: A New Hope, isn't it? Where Luke fires the thing down, blows the Death Star up. That's what it kind of is. It was that. But again, I had that. You know, obviously, I was in there anyway, and nobody wanted what the worst case scenario. Even now, at the time, I couldn't bring myself to say the R word, and even now, I don't want to say it. I remember thinking, I don't want to say the R word. I kept calling it the worst case scenario. But I had that. But I also, in the back of my head, knew I had all my recording kit in the bag. So I'd been recording beforehand. I was recording the crowd singing before the players came out, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to go in that tunnel after. And I don't want to go in that tunnel. And I had that on me as well, thinking, and I can't tell anyone. The guy I sat with, I saw him the other week, and he went, I didn't know. That's why you nearly fainted. He went, now I know. So I know I couldn't tell you. And that's someone I know. I had no idea I was in there. Because I didn't want anyone asking me questions as well, because I couldn't answer them. I couldn't have told you at the time. I wasn't allowed.
Some of our when we did, I was just going to say, when we did the spaces, some of our fans, you'll know it's going around. You see Twitter as well as I do, and it's you shouldn't celebrate staying up. I don't, as a lot of people said in your podcast, because you interviewed everyone, Coleman, talking a lot, and the manager. It was relief, wasn't it? It wasn't. It was just a weird feeling this time. The Crystal Palace was like you celebrate because people wanted you down, and you it didn't happen. So you're proud because you knew a lot wanted us down, that Crystal Palace one. This one, it was just a really like sickly, weird anxiety feeling after it for me. It took me like a day to recover from it. And they all said that as well, didn't they, when you interviewed them afterwards? Yeah. It was just relief. There wasn't celebrating a relegation battle. It was just relief because, of course, we want to stay up. Because I said on the channel before I went down, before I travelled down to the Bournemouth game, I was just walking down. I just had to go out and do a walk, and I just did a walk and talk. And I said, our financial situation isn't good. If we go down, we don't get the stadium, and we're finished. I honestly thought if our financial situation isn't that good when we stay up, if we did go down, we're finished. And the moment I woke up and I knew that game, I was going to that game, I thought to myself, this is a day we stay up or get relegated. And it was just. And we'll talk about it now because we'll have to do another show where we talk about the podcast because there's so many other points that I want. There's so much in it. There's like 11 episodes of an hour and loads of good stuff all the way through. So I can't get everything in it. Listen to it if you haven't listened to it.
You've not even got onto if Seamus Coleman's a legend, which he insists he's not.
I did see you get a bit of grief for that on Twitter for calling him a legend. And I was going to jump in, but I thought, no, because I'm very defensive over my Coleman. So I didn't jump in. I kept my mouth shut. But I did see like Liverpool fans jumping on it and stuff like that. And I thought, no, I'm not going to jump in.
That was the other week, wasn't it? I think I'd said about it being the best bit of Premier League business, I think. And I stand by it. For somebody who didn't come through an academy, £60,000 to now be a record appearance holder for your club. 2 major injuries as well, and still be playing and still captaining the side, and what he brings to the side, I'll stand by it. I'll get more grief.
He is Everton. Coleman is just, I don't know why. If it was any other player that had been there that long and it wasn't Coleman, you probably wouldn't feel the same. But he's like a fan that's a player, and he is just Everton, isn't he? And I love him, and I can see why you think he's just amazing. Coleman is. His interview as well, like you said, Coleman, you wouldn't think he's a professional footballer. I want to meet him. I'm jealous that you've got to do some of this, to be fair, because I'd love to meet Coleman. But yeah, I'd love to meet Kale as well. But Coleman's he's one that I'd like to meet. But he's just genuine, isn't he? And he said a lot of people was going up to him on the school runs saying, please don't go down and stuff like that. So it's crazy. Yeah. You did get some really good stuff.
You have to think about that. And I hope that's something that the podcast has brought, is that actually those players knew what everyone thought, and they knew how much it meant and how serious it was and what the situation was. They knew that. They don't need people hurling abuse saying you don't. They cared. I can assure you, they all cared. Every single one of them cared. And you saw it. They were exhausted at the end. They were just so exhausted by it. So yeah, that's one thing I can tell everyone, and it sounds really twee saying that, but they did. They absolutely cared, every single one of them.
I was thinking this with Calvert-Lewin at the moment as well. I always say it anyway. Our fans, I feel they're onto him. Obviously, we're hunting goals, and he's not got the goals. And you mentioned his goal will come. I'd just love us to go and put a big Calvert-Lewin banner and say we're behind you, because I think we do need to remember. And we'll touch on it now. Like we've talked about the podcast, so we'll touch on what's going on now, and then we'll finish the show. So much to talk about, cracking show. But what I was gonna say to you is, I just rather us get a big Calvert-Lewin banner and say we're behind you, because he will get goals. It's just confidence. But then some of our fans are saying, "Oh, you're crap, you're this, that, and the other," and it's not going to help. And me as a fan, I think to myself, remember, we was in 2 relegation battles. We need Calvert-Lewin to be the best Calvert-Lewin. So jumping on him isn't going to achieve anything, because that Brighton game, before that Brighton game happened, I was on a space and some guy was giving me crap and he was like, who's going to score? And I goes, I don't know, but I just believe our players will score for us. He goes, yeah, but you tell me in that Brighton game who's going to score. Dwight McNeil's not going to score. Decore's not going to score. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you wouldn't have predicted that Brighton game could happen. You never know what's going to happen in football, basically. And it's the same with Calvert-Lewin. If he could score, if we get behind him to score, he might go on to score the goals that he scored under Carlo Ancelotti. I just think we need every player that we've got, and we need everyone to be the best that they can be. So us getting on to them We should know that by now.
Yeah,
because
and they're
every
people.
player was
They're
key.
people. They have. I asked
Yeah.
Dyche about it the other week. You completely spot on, because I asked Dyche about it the other week because Dwight McNeil's girlfriend has been poorly in hospital. Meg, she's in the series. I think she's in the first episode with Dwight. I went with them to they donated loads and loads of toys, and she's lovely, really nice, normal person. Really loved him getting involved at Everton. She got involved as well on a match day, and to think, he's been going through all that while she's been very poorly. He's been sleeping in the hospital this season and still playing and still putting in fantastic performances and still scoring and still getting assists. And because they are normal people, they still have other things going on. And I think that's really important, to remember that. A lot of them are dads, a lot of them have got kids at home. You know what it's like if your kid's not so well and all that kind of stuff. So, they've got all these things going on, plus they know the stress of the situation that Everton are in. And that's a lot, because, I felt like their mum sometimes, I was like, that's a lot. Some of these are really young lads, some of them are like 20, like 19, 20. Like, that's a lot for a 19-year-old.
No, they are young. I'm Onana's biggest protector, which I get stick for. People think I'm obsessed with him. But I do protect him. Yeah, I've just gone and protected him recently because Onana's gone and done an interview, and I think to myself, I've got to go and back him up now, because he says he's gone and said he wants trophies, and Everton's fans are going to go at him for being ambitious, talking about trophies when we're nowhere near trophies. But I want to point out, if Onana said he wants to win trophies, what footballer doesn't? If that was Coleman that come out now and said he'd love to get a trophy, which he did say in your interview, no one would say anything. But because Onana said it and there's talks of him leaving, he's got loads of stuff. That interview has made me so motivated for Coleman to win a cup. This FA Cup, Emirates FA Cup.
Imagine if he won the FA Cup. Imagine.
Oh, please, God. Please,
imagine.
God,
I mean, I
trophy.
said on air, I presented from the game the other. I could see somebody's comments come up there. Eugene, I think Everton will win the FA Cup this year. Well, that would be good.
Please.
Yeah. And I said on air, I was like, actually, do you know what I think as well? A lot of football people, that if their team isn't still in the FA Cup, and imagine, just for a minute, everybody imagine and manifest it, that there is a final and Everton are in it. I think unless it was your team against Everton, I think most people would look at it and go, actually, for that person alone, that one player, I would love Everton to go and win so he can lift that trophy. And if that's how he goes out, because I don't know, that might be the end, then that's it. He goes out. And then I can say to him, you are a legend. If that's how you won't have it.
I like that. Can I, am I right just showing one or two comments, Dan?
Yeah, let's drop a few
comments. We've had loads on tonight, haven't we?
I didn't know if anyone would watch.
You're joking, aren't you? God, I know you know Mick as well. He said his questions to you, Julie, is that you've got any chance of climbing off the bottom of your mini Everton prediction league?
I'm off the bottom.
Are you off the bottom? There you are, Mick. Take that, Mick.
If anyone doesn't know, I'm in an Everton prediction. It's me, Alan Myers, Elton Wellesby,
and Mick.
But yeah, I'm second because I predicted 1-0 on Wednesday. So you get a point for getting, if you predict a win, you get a point for getting the result right. And then I got the score right, so I got 3.
There are, Mick. It's beating you. Eugene wants to know who your favourite manager, Everton manager of all time.
Can I say Sean Dyche?
You can say Sean Dyche if you want to. We'll say who's your second best. Who's your second best?
I have the same birthday as Sean Dyche as well, so I feel like...
Oh, come on then. Well, that's it then, isn't it?
There we go. So that's why I get on with him. Well, it's got to be Howard Kendall, hasn't it?
Kendall. I would have. Well, for me personally, I think Dan's a massive Moyes fan though.
Yeah, for work wise, Roberto Martinez was brilliant to deal with. I know it all kind of fell apart near the end, but yeah, initially, and that first season was brilliant, wasn't it? It was really enjoyable time, and I'm pretty sure
the first season especially.
Yeah, I
first
think the
season
points
was lovely.
tally that season. I think the previous season would have been second. I think I remember rightly as well. So it was a really high points tally. It was record points tally, and yeah, so he was really good to deal with. Really good to deal with. He reminded me a little bit of how Frank was. He got to know everybody in the club. You know, knew everyone's names and things. So yeah, he was good. But yeah, surely Howard Kendall.
Exactly. Very good. Thank you very much, Dan.
We're gonna have like 5-10 minutes to talk about what's going on now, and then we'll finish the show on what you're looking to do going forward, which you already kind of touched on. We're hoping you get in the house, get you back now, get some get a podcast for this trophy that we're gonna win.
You're all determined to kill me, aren't you? You're all determined to put me in there, so I have a full-blown nervous breakdown.
It could be good. This is what we're going to talk about now. So for just 10 minutes on it, because we've hit the podcast, which I mainly wanted to talk about, and we'll separate and do another show. But you've been talking about it on your radio station. Dyche, it's really frustrated me because Dyche he's done well this season. And we shouldn't be where we are. And you know what I'm going to say, 10-point deduction. And it's killed this season, hasn't it? I'm happy with Everton now. I like my players, and I haven't liked the Everton players for a long time. But Dyche has got every single player working hard now. I don't think many players don't know what they're doing. Dyche has got them all knowing what they're doing. And I think we'd be fine this season. It's only the 10-point deduction which has made it look like it could be another relegation battle. What's your thoughts on it, or it's something that we've got to touch on?
Yeah. I thought what was organised for the Man United game, which was the first one after the points deduction, was again, the fans are just brilliant. Just, if for a fan base to do everything it does and more, it's just incredible. I cannot speak more highly of the Everton fan base. It's as simple as that. I don't think many people would do. And it was a shame, the result. I don't think anyone could. It was a freak goal, wasn't it, to start with? A wonder goal that he's never going to score again. And I felt 3-0 flattered United as well. I don't think they came across like they battered Everton. I think you've got to, again, take it into account. How deflating is that as a player to have been through it, particularly anyone that's been there the last 2 seasons, been through that, seemingly be getting out of it. And actually, there was talk of, can Everton get to a European place here? Actually, and everyone's looking up rather than down for about 2 weeks. Yeah, and everyone's thinking, right, well, the maths here is, 6 is in touching distance here. And then to just slide back down, it was like snakes and ladders, wasn't it? Through no fault of your own. That's going to play in. And then I was really pleased that they run next. And I think it's good stuff. And yeah, it's difficult. And then again, I think the cup game, I saw some people saying it wasn't a great game. And yeah, do you know what? It won't go down as historically the best game. But actually, I think Dyche has sort of said, hasn't he, because of the situation, it's just winning games. And sometimes it's not going to be pretty. And I think because of the situation again, I don't really care. I genuinely don't really care at this point. Just get the points and keep going in the cup, because I think that's good. Everybody wants a cup run. Everyone deserves a cup run for everything that has gone on in the recent seasons. I think, imagine getting to, I don't even want to think about it, but imagine getting to Wembley and having a full day out. It'd be amazing. And getting the cup at the end of it. But, you've got to think, what were the players going through again? I know they had a meeting. They had a meeting when the points deduction happened, and it was quite an intense meeting. I think there was a lot of people in it, a lot of questions answered, a lot of things looked at. This time there was another meeting, and Dyche said it was just kind of, we had a meeting, said, this is a situation. There is a second, breach now going to be sent to an independent commission. And they just got on with it. But even so, it must be hanging. I think everybody was hanging over everybody, wasn't it? I think Dyche will do really well. He's given them a few days off, and they're all coming back in just to sort of get away, which I think is good. Get away from it. Get away from the headlines. I've seen on a few of the players' Instagram. I saw Mackenzie Hunt had been away, some fancy golf thing abroad.
I did see James Garner with a coffee in his hand at some nice place. I don't know where he is though, but he's sightseeing. James Garner is. I think they've all had a little break, haven't they? Which is good for them. I think they need to recharge.
That's the right thing to do. Just get out, have a little bit of a break, come back in. Yeah, as for I know that what happens, the order it's going to happen in, the appeal will happen first because it has to, and then the second PSR breach will be looked at by an independent commission, and that has to be done by 12 weeks from when they were notified. So that's a week ago today, isn't it? So we're already 7 days into that. So yeah, 12 weeks. And then any appeal would have to be done as well. I don't like this scenario where people are saying it might be a situation where league standings, obviously Nottingham Forest find themselves in a similar situation where league standings are decided. The final game is the 19th, isn't it, this time? And they go off the full week, so the 24th. So they're saying that's still a business week of this season. I don't like that. I think for the integrity of the league, and I think any fan, no matter who you support at this point, because there could be teams think they're safe and then actually they end up not being safe. It needs to be done quickly, in my opinion. It needs to be dealt with fast. So the appeal will be first. No one seems to really know the time frame of that either, but it's got to happen before. So it's got to happen before 12 weeks. I think it'll be soon. I think it'll be in the coming weeks. We'll hear something on that. I'd like to think some points will be coming back, but I don't know. I think everyone's a little bit confused. I think I can say that on everyone's behalf. I think everyone's confused as to where the 10-point came from. Don't think that makes sense to anybody because there's nothing written down anywhere. And I know the Premier League, in fairness, say, well, all the clubs said, we all back this PSR and we all back how it's run. But it's, to me personally, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how Portsmouth, when they were relegated, went into administration, got 9 points. This is £20 million on interest payments on a stadium, an infrastructure that's going to make the club more sustainable in its own right. So I don't understand how that's 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more questions than answers. I'm just glad I'm not
think all
excited.
I was going to say, I think some of our biggest beefs are the mitigated circumstances that the Premier League have kind of just they don't accept anymore, even though we were supposedly working, alongside them. And I have to, not to give you ego too much of a boost, Julie, but I did listen to you on Radio 5 Live when they were talking about the FFP and the PSR and everything else. And I think sometimes we're fighting a battle, aren't we? Because we're so deep into it all and we know the ins and outs of it. When we come across other people who are on the media and everything else who don't have a thorough understanding of it, and they just see it from a sort of a face value of what they see sort of on Sky of things, it's good to have people to back our corner. And actually, during that interview, I don't know if you felt it or not, but it felt as though they were kind of having a little go at us, but then you came back and explained it a little bit more, which I thought was a massive thing, to be honest.
Yeah, do you know what? It's a really complicated story, and it's not really why I got into sport reporting at all, to be talking about this stuff. This is way beyond my capabilities, and I've read a lot of things, and I've read, the Commission's report, and it's all really intense stuff. So it's just trying to figure it out, and it's really hard to understand the rules, and it's hard to understand what happened, and then the reasons why, and the explanations of what happens next. There's so many different things spinning around it. But yeah, and I don't like it, at games, and I don't know, this banter goes on, but you hear opposition fans singing, your cheats and things. And there was no on-pitch advantage from what happened. That doesn't, I think it's all right to say that I think anyone who's watched Everton saw there was no on-pitch advantage. There was 2 relegation battles on the bounce that went, like the last one was 43 minutes off, worst case scenario. So, that's kind of, it wasn't, and I think the Man City thing, and while they are different charges, so it's important to say it is different. Over 100 charges, and that's still pending over more seasons. I think that's the bit, and I understand the predicament the Premier League are in. It's very complicated to look over that many, and they're all different as well. I think it's like 7 that are the same. They're all slightly different, so I get that, but there's got to be a better way of doing it. Why is it going back to 2016 and we're in 2024 now? There's got to be a quicker way, because as somebody said to me, is it better then to do it 115 times than once, because it makes it more complicated to sort out? And it just fit. And I think on top of that, there's been the VAR decisions. There's been DCL's red card that clearly wasn't a red card. And then that it just feels like a constant battle. And I think that's what Evertonians feel at the minute. And I think sometimes it's hard when national thing, and this isn't a criticism of them either. They've got a lot of things to cover, a lot, not just football. They're covering a lot of sports, a lot of teams, and sometimes you only get a 5-minute slot, so it's very. Whereas we probably talk about it, and I cover it locally, probably a lot more in depth. So we probably do understand it a lot more. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's just not nice again to see this going on and left in limbo again. And for the integrity of the league, it has to be done quickly, in my opinion, because it's unfair on everybody. And this, I think Dyche said it brilliantly. I thought he was superb in his press conference last week. And he said, this is punishing the fans. And it is. It's punishing the manager, it's punishing the players, and it's punishing the fans. None of which, those three groups of people, did anything to put this situation that Everton are in, whether it's the league or how the club was being run and what was going over and what, any breakdown of communication between the league and the club. Essentially, the people that are left with this now are the fans, Sean Dyche, and the first team players. And that's not acceptable. And that's unfair to keep this going. And that's my view on it.
He does nail that. I said that as well. I think he said it's an on-field sanction, he says, doesn't he? He says, why have they given us an on-field sanction?
On-field sanction for an off-field an off-field crime or something.
Yeah, and that stadium's being used in the Euros as well. So when the UK and Republic of Ireland have the Euros, it's going to be, that stadium, we know it looks amazing already. It's not even finished. That's going to be beamed around everywhere. Because it's a war. It looks like it's floating on the water. It's going to look incredible, and it's a huge asset to the league as well. It's a Premier League stadium, and I hope
you do get an interview with Chong at the end. I've got it pinned again. I'll advertise it again. It's pinned in the comments and it's in the bio. If you have a look, the podcast, hit it, because at the end, you get another interview. I get so much out of this. I've got about interviews from people I didn't even know, and they get an interview from Chong. That was an interesting one as well, because it's interesting to listen back, and then now you know that you have got... He didn't think that we was going to get... He says we've been working with the Premier League. He didn't think that we'd get the deduction or stuff like that. That's why I say you need to go back, Julia, to be fair, because... It's changed now, hasn't it? Some of the stuff that you got in the interview, I want you to go back and say what you think now, because he did say that everything with the stadium, I've got it, all the plans here, that it's gone perfect, this has gone well, and it's going really well and stuff like that. And when you interviewed him at that moment, I think it was USN or something like that, and it's changed now, going to 777 partners that might take over. So there's so much change, isn't there?
It was the podcast MSP. Now. It was MSP, wasn't it? We were in the talks when I was in there.
Go back there.
777. We're still waiting on that. I forgot about that. We're still waiting on that as well. We don't know what's happening there. We've got January. Anyone who hasn't heard, listen to episode 8, because I think that will explain probably what we will see happen over the next week before the transfer window, because it was definitely talked about. And yeah, there just seems to be so much again, doesn't it? It is the story that everyone is talking about in sport. Just everyone's got to stick together. I think
it's just going to be. I was just thinking to I felt like I'd watch Rocky revisiting the relegation battle on your podcast, but it did make me think to myself. Now I know we're frustrated. This is one of Dan's speeches here, because I get these freaking. It's part of being an Everton fan. It did make me think to myself. Don't forget that we was in 2 relegation battles, and we might have to be there for them again. We might go for a period where we have to sell players with this financial situation, but we need to just keep them up until things are sorted. We need to be there for Everton again. I don't think it's going to be the last time we're going to have to be there for them. And I don't want Everton fans to think, I've had enough, because the problem is Everton fans just need to know what the situation is, because we don't know whether we're getting these 10 points, whether we're not. And we've gone from 2 relegation battles, and we should be there with the mindset of fighting this other relegation battle that could possibly happen. We probably wouldn't be in it if we didn't get the 10-point deduction. But I think as fans, we need to know what we've got, because I don't want these games now, us thinking, you know what, I wish, when you think back, I wish now we was making more of an atmosphere, or I wish now we was trying to do something to not be in that relegation battle. We need to do everything to make sure we're not there again, because we know how it felt, that Bournemouth game. It felt really bad, and as fans, we're going to have to be there for them again. And we need to know what we're getting, in my opinion. I don't know if we're going to get 10 points. I don't know if we're going to get them taken away. The frustrating thing is for me, Julie, is that I honestly do believe if the Premier League wouldn't have messed about with us, the form that we was in before they got the 10-point deduction, we probably would have been pushing up, like you say, for 10th, going into 8th. And Sean Dyche had us playing. He had 4 wins on the bounce. He had us playing well away before that. And we looked on the way up, and we looked out of trouble, and no more relegation battles. And now the Premier League want to play around with us and keep messing with our heads. And then the referees, like you say, they want to keep messing around with our heads, making us think things are corrupt. And it's just crazy.
Still the only side not to have a penalty. Yeah. No, that, you know, all these things still do the rounds all the time. And it feels like Everton always have to do it the hard way. But you know, we've all seen it, and I saw it firsthand what it means when the fans stick together, which they did last season. And yeah, I don't think there would be a better fan base to take this on, because nobody's going to go quietly, so to speak. So, you know, I just think it's going to be hard, and I think anyone who thinks that the next few months is going to be easy and that we should be expecting to see, you know, award-winning performances and all this kind of stuff, it's not. It's just going to be digging in and grinding out results and sticking together and trying to make sure that it's not the last game again. Nobody wants that. Just have a really nice, calm last game. That would be awesome.
Look after that stadium, like you said, that floating stadium on water that looks like a dream.
Yeah, look after.
We
and
just
then see Goodison go out,
look after that.
We now know Goodison's going to get one last full season, which my personal view on that is it should get one last go, and everybody knows now as well. And I like the way the club came out and said that's the plan. So I know some people kind of wanted it a bit sooner. I think. So Bradley Moore Dock will be handed over at the end of this year. So actually, it doesn't give you long to get everybody staff orientation done and all the safety certificates and everything. That takes time if you think the season ends in May. So yeah, and I think Goodison deserves it. After all this time, it deserves to go out properly, not kind of potentially on a Tuesday night cup game and then everybody disappears. It deserves a bit more respect, in my opinion, than that. And I think it will be, you know, and it's nice to now know when it's going. So just a really calm end of this season. And a nice season next season. Just, you know, a lovely 12th finish. A lovely, boring 12th finish would do.
12th finish, and I'm still being greedy. I want that FA Cup for Coleman. I'm sticking on it. I want him to win a trophy before. Although I don't think he'll retire, because Coleman did say on your thing, he said, when I feel like in training they're better than me and I'm struggling and I feel like the players in training are taking me on too easy, I'll hang my boots up. But he gets better and better, doesn't he? So we might have
brilliant against Newcastle. You wouldn't have thought he'd been out for 6 or 7
he's getting
months.
Better. He's got the hunger, hasn't he? He wants to stay. He's a Terminator. He is the
well, maybe the FA Cup. Maybe the FA Cup this time. That would do. Just get it done.
That'd be ideal.
What we'll do, people. I've really enjoyed this part. I know you have as well. Was excited about this. We're really grateful for you coming on. There's so much to talk about on your podcast. I've written loads of stuff down, but there's so many parts and other stuff that you got. There's more on the stadium as well. They said that we had to move stadium because that stadium wasn't fit and stuff like that. Would have got done for it in the end. It's just too old, isn't it? We don't want to move because it's the best state. It's just got so many memories, but we are going to have to move.
That'll be weird, won't it? When there's a free kick and everyone's not going, hang on.
might just do it. Might just do it out of habit.
Automatically a free kick and everyone starts pretending there's sort of a beam in the front. But yeah.
It is good. You said on the podcast, and I've tweeted it loads. Every time, because we've got Luke who comes on the channel, he does a lot of stadium drone stuff. Every time I see that new stadium, I can hear our fans in it. I can hear you can hear the Everton roar in it, and it's gonna be amazing. And that's why I say us Everton fans need to keep us in the Premier League. Don't let anybody beat us. We haven't been through those two. Listen to Julia's documentary. If you're ever down, listen to that documentary because it's like a rocket. It picks you back up. We haven't been through those two relegation battles for no reason. It can't all be for nothing. You can't fight to stay up and then fight to stay up and then just as fans just say, oh, you know what, I've had enough. Premier League are against us. They're trying to take. Don't let the Premier League win, in my opinion. Don't let anyone win. We can stay up, and sure, we're better. We've got a better team this season. Sean Dyche is a very good man. Get behind him. Calvert-Lewin, get behind him. He'll score soon, and we'll be all right. In my opinion, we need to stick together, like you've just said.
I always say to my son, it will feel all the better when it finally happens and that trophy's lifted. I always say that to him. It will feel even better than you think it will.
Well, that Bournemouth game was Eliana's first game, wasn't it, Paul? Me and Paul, we went to the Bournemouth relegation, and that was Eliana's first game, and she's I think she was 4 when she went, and we wasn't sure whether to take her because the relegation battle, you think, oh, is it going to get nasty or toxic? But I took her first game, and you took your daughter as well, didn't you, Paul?
I did, yeah.
And it was, and like you said on the podcast, the Roar, although you said the Roar was the biggest roar ever, and Dyche said it's the biggest atmosphere he's ever heard in football. He's been in the game a long time. I can't remember because it feels like a dream.
It felt like
roar,
to me.
You knew it was a roar.
There's probably somebody sciencey listening that goes, this makes no sense. But to me, it felt that loud, you couldn't hear it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was that loud. Yeah. It was almost like it was like a white noise. Like everything just flashed.
It was.
Yeah. It was the weirdest noise I've ever heard. And yeah, I was walking back to my car afterwards and I messaged someone I know, and they went, you always believed. And I thought, I don't know if I did or I didn't, but I just kept saying it'll be fine, it'll be fine over and over again. But yeah, it was the weirdest experience, that game. And as you said before, it's not elation, was it, Dan? It wasn't like, yeah. And also, I don't get it when people say, oh, people celebrating a draw. Well, actually, at that point, sometimes getting a draw was really good. And I think it's all in context. Like, I'm not really bothered. Like, I like it when teams celebrate. I know Dyche doesn't like it. I like it when somebody celebrates a really good tackle. I like all that kind of stuff. That's why we watch it. That's why we watch football. It's part of that emotion. But I can't believe that was her first game.
No.
She being back.
So, she wants. She's got
to go more often. Lucky charm.
I've got to get her back. Yeah. She does, because some guy actually come up to me. This is why I love Everton as well, because I'm not from the area. I travel 3 hours when I do go, and some guy, but the Scousers always make me feel so welcome. I've never come across anyone bad at the stadium. I get in conversations for about half an hour. I've been coming for so long and stuff, and they tell me the stories and stuff. And some old guy come up to Eliana, didn't he, Paul? And he goes, "How old is she?" And I go, "She's 4." And he goes, "I brought my daughter to her first game, last relegation battle, and we stayed up. She's going to be lucky," and she was, and we did stay. I look white as a ghost. I didn't. I built myself up. I said to Paul, I'm standing there, and I said to Paul, I goes, the players are playing, and I said to Paul, we've got to do something, and he's like, what? And I goes, I don't know. I was shouting at the players as loud as I could. I was like, come on, please, this is it. We're down if you don't do it. Leicester have scored. And I'm sure they could hear us, couldn't they, Paul? And
they couldn't, they didn't know the score. At half time, they had no idea. And I actually think, looking at it, I've seen footage of when Decore scored and the reaction at Leicester, it dipped massively. I do know the players came off and asked the score at Leicester. They didn't know. And I think that's credit to everybody in that stadium, because although I think there was a point where everyone was looking at each other, and I don't really remember whispers going around and everyone just kept singing and singing. I will admit, at half time, I had a moment where I sat in my chair for about 5 minutes and thought, oh no, oh no. Then I was like, right, it's fine. Yeah, and but the player, I do know the players didn't know.
No, we was looking at people in the stands, and they looked ill.
That's better,
honestly,
isn't
there
it?
was you looked at some people, and we was just you know, you just stand and you do that big puff like where's the goal going to come from? Eliana's favourite player is Decore now, and the rumours about Decore leaving to Saudi best not be true, because I love him for that. I really do love Decore for that. And that was, when you watch it back now, you still think, wow, can't believe that. But some Everton fans will say, oh, you're celebrating relegation battles. Everton are bigger than that. We should be winning trophies. Yes, we should. But who wouldn't be happy about staying up? Our club would have been finished if we went down. So how can you not be happy about that? Right, we said we'd do an hour, but we've had that much to talk about.
Sorry.
We will do a show.
No,
it's been
Julie's been amazing. She's been really
comments.
polite as well. She probably wanted to go 40 minutes ago.
we've been that long that the dog stopped fighting the ball now. I can't even hear the dog in the background now.
Dog's had enough.
Even the dog's got tired, but people in the comments have said they've really enjoyed it. Cracking listen. So we'll try and drop another one if we can later on. Thanks for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed it. And people, if you haven't listened to the podcast, honestly, get on it. It's wicked. I mean, you can literally you can be making a cup of tea and be in the moment of what happened and get a really good, you can have Farewell in your ear telling you how he runs the club and stuff like that while you're making a cup of tea or hoovering around the house. So get on the podcast, give it a listen, get behind it, because that is, I don't like podcasts, but that's made me like them. That's the best podcast I've ever probably because it's Everton, but that's the best
I
podcast.
should say as well, there was some really clever sound engineer, Arlie from BBC Studios, everybody that works on it from BBC Studios as well. It wasn't just me. I was just the unfortunate poor soul that was in there, but there was so many people worked on it. Mark Chapman as well, Carl Duran, who worked for BBC Studios, was incredible support on it. Everybody was amazing, and a massive thank you to Everton, because they stuck with it. They kept going. They kept me in there. And that's why we've got, can see actually what it was like. So fair play. And thank you to everyone inside Everton that spoke to me and was really nice to me as well. Never mean. No one was mean.
That's because your best mate was Sean Dyche. I just want you to get back in, please. Use your contacts and get back in, because we want to know what's going on.
I'm not best mates with Sean Dyche. Let's not start that rumour.
Well, not best mates with him, but he doesn't. Sean Dyche, he doesn't like a lot of people, but he answers your questions on the press conferences really well, better than anyone else's questions. So
thank you.
There you go.
Thank you to him.
Yeah, there you go. Hopefully he's listening. Sean Dyche, get her back in. Right, I'm going to drop the banner on now. Paul, last words from you, and we'll drop the banner on and end the show. Thanks, everyone, for coming on.
Yeah.
Get on the podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Cracking guest tonight.
Been great, Julia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up the top is everyone. Stay behind Everton. They need us.